Welcome, everyone.
Hi, Annie.
Hi, Jeanette. Thank you so much all for joining us today. I'm Annie Smith. I'm the Vice President of Research and Data at NCEA, and we're lucky enough to have Lincoln and Laura with us. If you want to introduce yourselves.
Lincoln Snyder, President of NCEA.
Laura MacDonald, Director of Professional Learning. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Laura. Good to see you again.
I know we're a small group. I know a lot of people will be watching the recording. So I'm going to start our presentation. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. And we'll also have time at the end for discussion. So with all things, I wanted to start us off in prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. My God, I do not know what must come to me today, but I am certain that nothing can happen to me that you have not foreseen, decreed, and ordained from all eternity. That is sufficient for me. I adore your impenetrable and eternal designs, to which I submit with all my heart. I accept them all, and I unite my sacrifice to that of Jesus Christ, my divine Savior. I ask in his name and through his infinite merits, patience in my trials, and perfect and entire submission to all that comes to me by your good pleasure. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So before I dive into the data, I just want to share some of the resources we have at NCEA that you might not be aware of. So we just created this website page, ncea.org, enrollment and retention, which lists a bunch of webinars, books, other resources that you can go to learn more about enrollment and retention. We have Discover Catholic Schools Week coming up in November. On October 4th, we will have a webinar with tips, sharing the marketing kit. So hopefully you can attend that. And then we'll have Catholic Schools Week the last week of January. So that said, I'm going to dive into the data. So there's 3 different data research studies that I want to look at today. So the first was called the Catholic School Choice. It was a partnership between Fatica and NCEA back in 2018. Then last year, NCEA surveyed all new parents to Catholic schools. And then EduChoices does monthly polling of parents across the country on their thoughts on schooling. And we have the August research data to share with you. So first, what were the parents thinking back in 2018? So this study had focus groups, had surveys, interviews of parents across the country, both ones that had students in Catholic schools and ones that did not have students in Catholic schools yet. And they found that of the Catholic parents in the study, more than 75% of them were willing to consider a Catholic school. So it's really important to determine their drivers and make sure that the Catholic schools, perceptions of Catholic schools match those drivers. And what they found, you'll see in this left chart, is the drivers of consideration among parents overall. So what this means is the more likely Catholic parents believe that Catholic schools place an emphasis on community service and volunteerism, creates an environment where everyone is welcome, and provides a good balance between academics and religious studies, the more likely they were to consider a Catholic school for their child. And what I think is interesting is the chart on the right kind of breaks it down by different types of parents, so non-Catholic parents, Catholic parents, white Catholic parents, and Hispanic Catholic parents. And you can see the different things that drive depending on the parent subgroup. So for example, Hispanic Catholic parents really want an environment where everyone is welcome, where non-Catholic parents really wanted adequate resources for students with learning challenges or disabilities. So it's really important when you are marketing your schools, thinking about who is the family that you're talking to and what are their needs, because their drivers for consideration are going to change vastly. And so this graph kind of shows you, it's a little confusing, but it shows you a list of descriptions of Catholic schools and what people thought describe Catholic schools. So the ones up here are things that they think most describe Catholic schools. So designed to deepen students' personal faith, encourage parents to play an active role, offers college preparatory courses. Down here are the things that people don't associate with Catholic schools. So like offering a diverse learning environment, has a strong performing arts program. But what's really important is we want those driver considerations, which we marked with this red flag, to match the most descriptive. So you could see the driver considerations are not the most descriptive back in 2018. So how can we get our parents' perception of Catholic schools to match what their drivers are of consideration. So emphasizing to parents how the Catholic school provides a strong character development or fosters a strong sense of community will be really important, because that will drive their likelihood to consider Catholic schools.
And we rolled out a marketing campaign in Sacramento when I was superintendent there that used this data. And the point was, we weren't changing what we were doing as schools. We were very happy with our programs, but we did emphasize different things within the program based on this data.
Well, I think we should give you any raising request exclamation point.
So as I was saying, for example, we had an education and virtues program that we had rolled out across elementary schools. And so we really emphasized the character aspects of that information to make sure that we were connecting what we were doing to the kind of messaging that we knew parents were going to respond to based on the data.
And then something that I think is interesting is looking at religious instruction. They found back in 2018 that although they found religious instruction really important, they felt that parents have it covered. With the majority of Catholic parents who attend church at least once a week thought their child receives too much religious instruction in their school, 76%, which is really interesting. So although religious instruction is really important, they feel like the parents are already handling it. And then this is a lot of data, so just take a second to look at it. Basically, each of these numbers is the percent that a parent said this was a priority. This column is parents who are willing to consider Catholic schools, but their youngest child is not enrolled. This column is parents with their youngest child enrolled, and this is the difference. So it's really important to look at the difference between people in Catholic schools and not in Catholic schools to see what you might want to do for retention versus enrollment strategies. So when thinking about enrollment strategies, critical thinking, 51% of parents who are considering Catholic schools but didn't have them enrolled thought that was really important. They also, 34% thought embracing diversity was important. Compared to parents who already had Catholic schools, only 22% thought embracing diversity was important, and only 34% thought critical thinking was. So huge difference between the two. And so to me, that says, when you're thinking about retention strategies, you might want to think about focusing on deepening the faith and how you do that, because that's really important for parents already enrolled. Where when you're thinking about enrollment, how can you, again, not change your program, but just express to your families how your school embraces diversity, how your school helps with critical thinking.
By the way, if you're looking for ideas on the critical thinking front, there's a researcher named Ashley Berner from Johns Hopkins that has published some really good studies on how private schools are exceptional at teaching things like discourse and dialogue and citizenship. And so she's got a lot of really good language in her studies about why we're different and special in that. And I think that really supports the critical thinking piece that parents are looking for so closely.
Lincoln, will you say that name again for us, please?
Put it in the chat. And her name is Ashley Berner.
Berner, okay.
Berner of Johns Hopkins University. And so if you Google it, there's a number of articles she's written talking about this discourse and dialogue piece and why we do it well. So I'd encourage you to check out what she's published.
Thank you.
So that was back in 2018. So now, a lot of different things happen. We had a world pandemic, and we also had a lot of new families come into our school. And so NCEA did a survey of parents who are new to Catholic schools to see what drove their consideration to Catholic schools. So this graph is showing you the important factors in choosing a Catholic school for these families. The far right is things that that was most important. Far left is least important. And so the most important things were safe learning environment, strong character development, challenging academic curriculum, and offering classes in person. And you can see not as important was this offering an emphasis on community service volunteerism, which we saw back in 2018, that was important. So this is a different subgroup, but you can see how different things changed over the couple of years. And I thought this was really interesting. When people were asked what the best part of the school was, caring and effective faculty and staff was the #1 thing by far. So families were really impressed with the staff at our Catholic schools. So how we can use them as a resource in our enrollment and marketing techniques and building those relationships and retention, I think is really important. And so then the third research study is EduChoices studies that they do every month. They have different questions on schooling in America. And so this is the August 2022 data. And so they asked school parents, why is your oldest child enrolled in that school type? And these are the top reasons. So while homeschool parents wanted safe environment and one-on-one attention, private school parents really wanted the academic quality and then safe environment and then class size. And what's interesting is this class size a month ago in July, this was moral and values. So even in 1 month, it's changed about what's most important to parents. And then this is just if school parents kind of got screwed up, but location and affordability is the most important, and followed by academic quality. So again, when you're thinking about enrollment and marketing, could be helpful to know where your families are coming from. If they're previously homeschooled or previously public school, you know, how for like public school families, how can you emphasize that it's an easy location to get to? What are the transportation options to get there? What are some of the ways they can afford the school? Where if they're previously homeschooled parents, you know, emphasizing the safe environment and how your school offers one-on-one attention to families and builds those relationships to students could be really important. And then this graph shows you just where different things fell. And again, you know, there are different parent subgroups, but I think it's important just to kind of summarize it all up because that was a lot of different data. So you can see this provides a good balance between academics and religious teachings. That was really important in 2018. Kind of went down in 2020 as families were much more worried about the safe learning environment. And now academic quality is up here again back in 2022. And then creating an environment where everyone is welcome, that continues to be pretty important. And then placing an emphasis on community. Oh, I see these got a little bit screwed up. Sorry, these arrows got screwed up. But placing an emphasis on community service and volunteerism is way down here at 10. This is also from EduChoice, and it just asking all parents, what's the main purpose of education? And the core academic subjects is #1 for grades K through 8 versus high school skills for future employment, and then core academic subjects. So again, you know, emphasizing your quality academic program across all these different studies is really important. And so we know we offer a great academic program. So how can we continue to emphasize that and explain that using data or impact stories of where your students go after leaving your schools? And then last thing from EduChoice, I just thought this was really interesting. They asked parents to grade their local school types. So yellow is private schools, light blue is district schools, and dark blue is charter schools. And prior to the pandemic, private schools really fell. Only 49% of parents gave an A or B, and it was the first time that we were really the same as public schools. No idea why, but what's fascinating is now look how high we are. We're at 74. We're the highest we've ever been. Private schools were much higher. So it just shows you that right now is the time to talk to those charter school parents, talk to those public school parents. They're thinking high things about your school. So how can we market to them? So just to sum it all up, some implications of what we just talked about, tailoring your conversation. As we discussed, priorities differ based on their background, their religion, etc. Making sure that you're understanding who you're talking to when they walk into your office, so you can emphasize the things that are important to them. You know, this is one basic way to look at it. You know, if in your survey, when they're filling out their application or the interest form, you know, asking them what's important to them. Is it academic quality? Is it a athletic program or arts program? And then trying to share with them how your school meets that need. I think it's really, really important to emphasize academic quality. Even if you don't have data at your school level, using state or national academic data for Catholic schools is one way to do that. And here's 3 different data points. So one was showing that parents reported learning losses for 64% of children in public schools, but only 43% of children in private schools. So pretty different. Another one was by Renaissance. So they looked at the impact of COVID on both math and reading percentile ranks. So where 0 was pre-COVID, you can see Catholic schools, students actually lost in math, 5 percentile ranks, but public schools actually lost by 11 in spring 2021 compared to pre-COVID. So we're not where we want to be. We obviously want to do better, but we're doing better than the public schools. And then in reading, we actually did better than pre-COVID expectations, and the public schools did worse. So this is one data point you can use. Maybe you have data at your school about how your students have progressed pre and post COVID, and specific ways that you've helped your students with their learning loss through COVID. And then NAEP is always a great resource through the National Assessment of Educational Progress. You can see Catholic schools have consistently been higher than public schools in both math and reading. NAEP recently came out with data just showcasing that our students across the country haven't done as well as they have previously post-COVID. And so again, just being aware with your parents about how you have strengthened your academic program, how you're offering extra supports for these families. And you can also emphasize non-academic data. If you have satisfaction surveys or other things to showcase your school's effectiveness, that can be really helpful. Here's some data from EduChoice, again, the school programming. They asked parents, how do you feel your child progressed in the last school year? And you can see private schools, 64% of them thought they did great in academic learning compared to 46% overall. 60% said their emotional development was very well compared to 42%. And the social development was 56 compared to 44%. So overall, in all the different areas, our private school students have done great. And again, if you don't have data at your school level, you can use this data. You can find other state data to use. Just really simple numbers for families can be helpful just so it can stick with them. As we discussed before, teachers are our greatest resources. They're already doing the really hard work. They already have a lot on their plate. So we don't want to put too much on them, but making sure that at the beginning of the school year, you take 10-15 minutes at the beginning of a faculty meeting so that they can practice their elevator pitch about their school, what makes their school unique. They know when your open house hours are, when applications are due, just so when they get asked by a parent or stopped at the grocery store, they can answer those questions about their school and can really be a great showcase for how awesome your school is. And then creating environments where teachers and parents can connect and build relationships. I know that already happens every single day, but they're a great resource for retention, especially.
And when I was working in schools, I put together for a particular school document that I called the songbooks, and it was the mission and vision statements, the student learning expectations, the principles of the religious order that sponsored the school, and then an elevator speech. And so it collected everything on one page for the staff so they could have it there to be able to refer back to it. And it really did, I think, give them good talking points that were on point.
Hey, Annie, could you go back one slide? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, this one.
So do any of these data points break out in comparison to charter school, or are they?
They're in the charter schools are mixed with the district school.
Okay, so it's just in there. We don't have like there's no way to identify a separate category for that.
Yeah, not for that's EduChoice didn't do that.
Okay.
This is a low sample size, just to break it out in the notes. It's very small.
Okay, thanks. We have trouble competing with charter schools in our area, and I'm working with one school in particular, and I thought that might be helpful if we could get it, but thanks. We can't.
Yeah, I know this is really hard. I know in a school in Massachusetts, they worked really hard to build relationships with the charter school. And so families that didn't get into the charter school, the waiting list, they actually got them to give them the waiting list so they could reach out to them. But that obviously took years of building that relationship. But I think it just shows that there are ways to work with your neighboring schools and try not to see them as competition, but how you can work together.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it depends on who the school leader is.
Yep, great. Thank you for going back for me.
No problem.
There's no way to work around the fact that charter schools can use their money from the state on marketing, and they're advised in California. I mean, the benchmark is 1 to 3% of revenue from the state spent on marketing the school, and so I think it just prods us to have to do the same.
And the last thing, this kind of goes with what Lincoln was talking about, but just creating a culture of hospitality with all your staff, using a playbook like Be Our Guest, so that everyone is always a welcome face to whoever's walking in that door, whether they're a parent, a board member, a business person, so that you're always representing your school, your staff, your students. So we have like 10-15 minutes where we could just do some discussion. Here are some discussion questions I wrote. We can talk about other things too if something else interests you. But just wanted to know what data was really surprised you, what did or didn't match your experience. What are some ways you are marketing your school that are unique that you think others should know about and maybe can utilize as we're all working together to strengthen Catholic schools? And how do you think about retention throughout the year? September 13th, you just finished enrollment, but now we had to move on to retention, as crazy as that is. So what are some of the things that you do throughout the year for retention? So feel free to write in the chat box or unmute yourself and talk. Love to hear from you all.
In looking at some of your data there, Annie, it reminded me of the importance of having a pre-tour type application or survey before your applicants arrive for a tour, knowing where they're coming from. I know you mentioned that was an important part of the data. Their preferences on what they might be there for are going to change based on if they're coming from homeschool program or a private school program. Also, an easy way to get parents to tell you why they're there. They don't always internalize, I think, what they feel what's important to them until they're asked, and they're not always asked right away. One way I would open up that conversation in a more comfortable way, because sometimes parents were nervous and saying the right things and doing the right things to kind of lower that effective filter, was to simply ask, why are you here? Why did you come to our school? And it seemed to be a really easy way for them to share without having to feel like you were asking them for some sort of data or their top 3 priorities. And 9 times out of 10, asking it in that way really led to a really strong conversation, whether they were interested in sports or interested in your technology program. It really helped me to be able to emphasize those strong points, because as we know, if we tell them everything about our school, they're overwhelmed and they're going to leave remembering part of it. But if we focus on those things, such as the data that's really important to them, they're more likely to remember those strong points and more likely to leave with the right information.
And another thing I'd like to emphasize in all this is we spend a lot of time talking about marketing and what to say up front. It's also really important to get comfortable with closing. So when somebody comes to the school, someone has to be the person to ask them. Sorry, life went off the more. What are you doing to make sure that the person that is going to make that invitation is trained in doing it? And so we expect our principals to go out and close the deal and get the families to sign up, and giving them support in that is a really important thing to do. So read a book on closing. There's different really good, simple, ethical ways that salespeople are trained in to make that invitation and make the ask and get the student enrolled.
Annie, do any of the data give information about exceptional learners?
I don't have anything off besides that. We have about 6% of students for disabilities, which I think is actually a lot higher. But we don't really have anything specific on that, unfortunately.
Okay.
But we know that's a great need.
When do you think that NCEA will do another survey?
On parent perceptions or on what? specifically?
Well, I don't know how you do your survey.
Okay, so we do annual surveys every single year. That's like a census. That's where we ask about how many students are in the school, how many schools, staffing, how many students have diagnosed disabilities. And then we are planning to do a repeat of the FATICA, hopefully, parent perception survey, because we know how much has changed in the last 4 years, next year in 2023. And then we do offshoot research as the need arises.
Do any of those surveys get to the exceptional learner? And how, how they're served in our Catholic schools?
No, and maybe that's something that we need to include with the parent perception survey. It's a great way to increase it.
Okay. Don't forget the gifted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I see a question about, we've seen a definite increase in the social and mental challenges of students for post-COVID. We have plenty to help students, but they still may leave us. Is anyone else experiencing this? Is there data on this? And Lincoln, I don't know if he just signed off by accident. He was just asked about this for Fox News too, about how we're supporting our schools with our students with social and mental challenges, and how vastly different it is than it was, pre-COVID. We have a partnership with Frenzy, which I think a lot of schools are using. I don't know if Laura, you want to share a little bit more about social and mental. And here's some research that Anna put in the chat too, if you want to look at.
It definitely is an area of concern that is brought to our attention by principals, superintendents, dioceses. We are working with counselors, Catholic counselors, starting this week on Thursday. We're doing a webinar with them to talk about building community within the school, knowing that we're having a lot of new families coming in, not only maybe without a religion background, but new to Catholic schools. So that community building right now is more important, maybe now more than ever. So we'll be starting that on Thursday. If you have counselors and Catholic counselors that you would like to join in, they can register still for Thursday's seminar. And we'll also be having a few more in the series to support our counselors. We're hoping in turn we will get more counselors engaged in things like NCEA 2023 so that we can use our counselors for sessions, and we'll see more of them doing presentations for our teachers and principals to really empower them to help us do a better job with social emotional learning. So stay tuned on that. We're excited about that, and we do have over 100 people registered for that event on Thursday. So we do know there's a need.
Well, if you have any other research questions, anything else, feel free to always reach out to me or Laura or anyone at NCEA. We'd love to support you around enrollment and marketing. As I said, our next webinar will be 10/4. Laura can share the information for the webinar for Thursday for the guidance counselor. October 4th will be around Discover Catholic Schools Week, because we think that's a great opportunity to get families to know about your school early. Instead of waiting until January, February. So kind of following like the high schools do with the fall start. So thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We know how busy everybody is. And yep, I can share the data slides. You can send those to you all. Thank you.